Before we begin, please remember that I am not a licensed financial advisor, and the information provided in this video is for educational and inspirational purposes only. This presentation is not a substitute for professional financial, legal, or real estate advice. Real estate investing involves significant risk, and you should always conduct your own due diligence and consult with qualified professionals before making any investment decisions. Your financial situation is unique, and any actions you take based on the content of this video are solely at your own risk. The single worst piece of real estate advice I ever got in my life came from someone I loved and trusted. They said, "Don't do it. It's too expensive. The market is crazy. You're going to get wiped out." They were trying to protect me, but what they were really doing was projecting their own fear onto my ambition. And that fear is the silent killer of wealth in America. It's the little voice that tells you to wait for the perfect time, to save up just a little more money, to wait for interest rates to drop, to wait for the market to crash. It's the voice of someday. And someday is a disease that will take your dreams to the grave with you. The problem is we are drowning in noise. You turn on the news, and it's all doom and gloom about the housing market. You scroll online, and you see 1,000 self-proclaimed gurus selling you 1,000 different get-rich-quick strategies. You talk to your friends and family, and you get 100 conflicting opinions. It's enough to cause total analysis paralysis. You end up doing nothing, stuck on the sidelines watching other people build the life you want. This video is the antidote. We're going to cut through all that noise. We're not here to talk about complex spreadsheets or confusing market jargon. We are here to arm you with something far more powerful: the mindset of the world's most successful real estate investors. We're going to distill decades, even centuries, of wisdom into powerful, memorable quotes that will act as your guiding principles. These aren't just feel-good platitudes to post on social media. These are battle-tested philosophies that have built fortunes. They are the mental tools you need to conquer fear, take decisive action, and turn your real estate dreams into your real estate reality. By the end of this journey, you won't just be motivated. You'll have a new framework for thinking about wealth and opportunity. Let's start with a quote so simple, so profound, that it has probably created more real estate millionaires than any other. It comes from the legendary American humorist and social commentator, Will Rogers, who famously said, "Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait." Let that sink in for a second. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But within that one sentence lies the most fundamental secret to building wealth and property. It's a direct assault on the market timing myth that paralyzes so many aspiring investors. People waste years, even decades, of their lives trying to predict the future. They try to time the absolute bottom of the market to buy, and the absolute peak of the market to sell. It's a fool's errand. It's like trying to catch a falling knife in the dark. Even the most seasoned professionals with teams of analysts get it wrong all the time. What Will Rogers understood is that the game isn't won by timing the market. It's won by time in the market. Think of it like planting a tree. If you want a giant, magnificent oak tree in your yard that provides shade and value, you can't just wish for it. You can't wait for the perfect weather, the perfect soil conditions, and the perfect price on a sapling. The best time to plant that tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. Every day you wait is another day you're not growing. Real estate is that tree. Your job is not to predict the rain. Your job is to plant the seed. When you buy real estate and wait, you are harnessing the most powerful, unstoppable forces in the economy and putting them to work for you. Let's break down what waiting really does. First, there's appreciation. Over the long term, despite the dramatic ups and downs you see on the news, the value of well-located real estate has consistently trended upward. It's tied to inflation, population growth, and the simple fact that they aren't making any more land. While you are sleeping, while you are working, while you are living your life, your asset is quietly, patiently growing in value. The person who waits on the sidelines for the perfect time misses out on years of this passive growth. Imagine two people in 2010. One person, let's call him Timid Tom, said, "The market just crashed. It's too scary. I'm going to wait until things feel safe again." The other person, Action Annie, found a modest, sensible property and bought it. For the next decade, Tom kept waiting for the perfect signal, while Annie's property value steadily climbed, riding the wave of economic recovery. Tom was trying to be a genius. Annie just had to be patient. Second, when you wait, you are paying down your loan. This is called amortization, and it's one of the most beautiful words in finance. Every single month, when you or your tenant makes a mortgage payment, A portion of that payment goes towards the interest, and another portion goes towards the principal, the actual loan balance. That principal portion is you systematically buying more and more of your own asset. You are forcing yourself to save and build equity. It's an automated wealth creation plan. After 10, 20, or 30 years of waiting, you don't just own an asset that has appreciated in value, you own a much larger chunk of it, or maybe even all of it. And third, here's the real kicker. Especially if you own rental property, you're letting inflation become your best friend. Think about it. If you lock in a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, your payment is essentially the same for 3 decades. But what happens to everything else over 30 years? The price of gas, groceries, and a cup of coffee goes up. Wages go up. And most importantly, rents go up. This means that over time, your biggest expense, your mortgage, stays fixed, while your income from the property grows and grows. The debt becomes cheaper in real dollars every single year. You are paying back yesterday's debt with tomorrow's inflated dollars. It is a financial cheat code. This single quote from Will Rogers is a complete shift in perspective. It moves you from a passive observer, waiting for the world to give you a perfect opportunity, to an active participant who creates their own future. It tells you that the power isn't in a crystal ball, it's in a calendar. So what does this mean for you right now? It doesn't mean you should run out tomorrow and recklessly buy the first property you see. Due diligence is still critical, but it does mean you should stop waiting for the stars to align perfectly. They never will. Instead, change your focus. Start the process now. Get your financial house in order. Talk to a lender to understand what you can actually afford. Start studying your local market like it's your job, so when a good deal, not a perfect deal, but a good deal comes along, you have the confidence and knowledge to act. Buying real estate and waiting is a declaration of faith in the future. It's a long-term strategy in a world obsessed with short-term gains. It's about playing the long game. But what if you feel like you can't even get into the game? What if the barrier to entry feels like a brick wall, and you simply don't have the capital to start? That's where our next piece of wisdom comes in. And it completely shatters the myth that you need a lot of your own money to get started in real estate. It's a principle that flips the entire script on conventional financial advice. It's the secret key that has unlocked more real estate empires than any other. And it's not some complex formula or a well-guarded secret of the ultra-rich. It's a simple, profound truth. A great deal will always attract money. Let me say that again because it's the foundation of everything that follows. A great deal will always attract money. The problem is, most aspiring investors have it completely backward. They spend all their time trying to save up a massive down payment, scraping together every last penny, believing that money is the first step. They think, once I have $100,000 saved, then I'll start looking for a property. But the pros? The people you see closing deal after deal? They know the money isn't the first step. It's the last. The first step, the only thing that matters at the beginning, is finding an incredible deal. To really understand this, let me tell you about a guy named Marcus. Marcus was a high school history teacher. A great one, in fact. He was passionate, engaging, and his students loved him. But as much as he loved his job, his salary didn't love him back. He was living in a small apartment, driving a 10-year-old car, and watching his landlord, who owned the whole building, cash rent checks every month from Marcus and 11 other tenants. Marcus was smart. He did the math. He realized his landlord was making more in passive income every month than he was making from a job that demanded 50 hours of his week. That's when the spark ignited. He devoured every book, every podcast, every YouTube video he could find on real estate investing. He was fired up, motivated, and ready to change his life. And then he looked at his bank account. He had $3,000 in savings. The median home price in his city was over $400,000. A 20% down payment was $80,000. At his current savings rate, he figured he could maybe afford to buy his first property by the time he was 97. The motivation fizzled out, replaced by a cold, hard wave of despair. The brick wall was real, and he had just run into it at full speed. He almost gave up. He almost accepted that real estate was a game for people who were already rich. But then he stumbled across an old forum post from a seasoned investor. The post didn't talk about saving money. It didn't talk about getting a second job. It just said, stop looking for money. Start looking for problems. Problems? Marcus was confused, but he kept reading. The investor explained, don't look for pretty houses with fresh paint. Look for ugly houses with overgrown lawns. Look for tired landlords who are sick of dealing with tenants. Look for motivated sellers who need to sell yesterday. Find a property where you can solve a problem, and in doing so, create massive value. When you find a deal like that, a deal where the numbers are so good they almost seem fake, you won't have to look for money. The money will find you. That was it. That was the mind-bending shift he needed. He wasn't a history teacher with no money anymore. He was a detective, a problem solver. His mission wasn't to save $80,000. His mission was to find one great deal. So he started hunting. Every evening after work, instead of watching TV, he would drive through neighborhoods he knew were a little older, a little less pristine. He wasn't just driving, he was driving for dollars, looking for telltale signs of neglect. Peeling paint, knee-high grass, boarded-up windows, newspapers piling up on the porch. He made a list. He went to the county records office and learned how to look up the owners of these properties. He started sending simple, handwritten letters. Not a slick marketing piece, but a genuine note. "Hi, my name is Marcus. I'm interested in buying your property on Elm Street. If you'd ever consider selling, please give me a call." Most letters got no response. Some people called him and told him to get lost. But then one did. It was an elderly woman named Carol. Her husband had passed away a few years prior, and the house was the one they had lived in for 40 years. It had become too much for her to manage, and she had moved in with her daughter in another state. The house sat vacant. It was a burden. The taxes, the insurance, the constant worry about break-ins. She just wanted it gone. Marcus went to see the house. It was a disaster. The roof was leaking, the kitchen was straight out of the 1970s, and it smelled like mothballs and regret. But Marcus didn't see a disaster. He saw a problem he could solve. He saw value. He ran the numbers meticulously. He got quotes from contractors. He calculated the purchase price, the rehab cost, and then he calculated the after-repair value, or ARV, what the house would be worth once it was fixed up and beautiful. The numbers were staggering. He could buy the house from Carol for a price that would solve her problem, invest about $50,000 to make it the nicest house on the block, and it would be worth nearly $100,000 more than his total investment. It was the deal, the one he'd been hunting for. Now for the money. Remember, he only had $3,000. But this time he wasn't approaching people with his hand out saying, "Can you please lend me money so I can try to invest?" He was approaching them with an opportunity. He put together a simple 2-page proposal. It had pictures of the ugly house. It had the full budget line by line. It had comparable sales of fixed-up homes in the area. It clearly showed the purchase price, the rehab cost, the projected profit, and a proposed split. He was no longer a borrower. He was the orchestrator of a fantastic business opportunity. He approached a local dentist whose kids he used to teach. The dentist had money sitting in a CD earning less than 1%. Marcus showed him the proposal. He said, "I found the deal. I'll manage the entire renovation. I'll handle the sale. You fund it. We'll split the profits 50-50. Your money will be secured by a tangible asset, the house itself." The dentist looked at the numbers, saw the clear, predictable profit and said yes. Marcus used what's known as private money. This is the lifeblood of creative real estate. It's not about banks with their rigid rules and endless paperwork. It's about individuals, doctors, lawyers, business owners, retirees, who have capital and want to earn a better return on it than the stock market or a savings account can provide. By bringing them a well-researched, high-profit deal, you are doing them a favor. You are their opportunity. And that's just one method. There's also seller financing, where the seller, like Carol in our story, acts as the bank. If she owned the house outright, Marcus could have proposed paying her a down payment and then making monthly payments directly to her, just like a mortgage. She gets a monthly income stream without the headaches of owning the property, and he gets the keys without ever talking to a bank. Then there are partnerships or joint ventures, exactly like the one Marcus formed with the dentist. One partner is the find and grind expert who finds the deal and manages the project. The other is the money partner, who brings the capital. They team up, leverage each other's strengths, and share in the success. The point is, the solution to the money problem is almost never save more money. The solution is to get so good at finding deals that money becomes a commodity. You have to shift your identity. You are not a wage earner trying to save. You are a deal engineer and opportunity creator. Your greatest asset isn't your bank account. It's your knowledge of a market, your hustle to find off-market deals, and your ability to present a profitable plan to others. This single shift in perspective is the difference between someone who dreams about real estate for 30 years and someone who buys their first property in the next 6 months. So the question isn't, do you have the money? The real question is, are you willing to do the work to find a problem you can solve? Because if you can find the problem, the solution in the form of capital is always right around the corner. But what happens once you have the deal and the funding? You're in the game. Now you face a whole new set of challenges and opportunities. This is where the real work and the real growth begins. This is where the real work and the real growth begins. Because getting the deal is like getting a ticket to the Super Bowl. It's exciting, you're in the stadium, but you haven't played a single down. The game itself, the messy, unpredictable, gut-wrenching, and ultimately rewarding game, is what happens next. This is the part they don't show in the highlight reels. It's the period of renovation, of unexpected calls from tenants, of budgets that seem to have a mind of their own. It's the phase where your initial excitement can curdle into doubt, and you start asking yourself if you made a massive mistake. This is the crucible, and your success or failure isn't determined by the market, or the property, or the interest rate. It's determined by your response to one simple, powerful idea, best captured by the Stoic philosopher King Marcus Aurelius, and popularized today by author Ryan Holiday. The obstacle is the way. Think about that for a second. The problem isn't something in the way of your goal. The problem is the way to your goal. Every challenge you face is a lesson in disguise, a tuition payment for your real-world real estate MBA. Let's imagine an investor. We'll call her Maria. Maria just closed on her first flip. It's a small 3-bedroom house that needs a cosmetic overhaul. She's got her budget, her timeline, her Pinterest board full of gray and white farmhouse designs. She's ready. Day one, the demolition crew starts pulling up the old laminate flooring, and they find it. The telltale signs of termite damage, far worse than the inspector noted. The subfloor is rotted through in 2 rooms. Her $50,000 renovation budget just got hit with a $15,000 surprise party she didn't plan for. This is the first obstacle. The old mindset says, "This is a disaster. I'm going to lose money. I should have bought a different house. I'm not cut out for this." The obstacle is a wall. But the new mindset, the one that understands that the obstacle is the way, says something different. It says, okay, this is my first lesson in due diligence. What did the inspector miss? How can I spot this myself next time? Who are the best, most cost-effective structural pest control companies in my city? Maria spends the next week not just getting quotes but learning. She's on the phone, she's on site with contractors, she's watching YouTube videos about subfloor replacement. That $15,000 problem forces her to build a network of contractors she didn't have before. It teaches her a critical component of home construction she knew nothing about. It sharpens her negotiation skills as she works to get the best price for the repair. The termite damage, the very thing that felt like a catastrophe, becomes the catalyst that transforms her from a rookie with a Pinterest board into a knowledgeable rehabber who understands a house from the foundation up. The obstacle became the way. A month later, the project is back on track. Then the plumber she hired, a guy with great online reviews, goes dark. He's already been paid for the rough-in, but he's not answering his phone to come back and install the fixtures. Another obstacle. The old mindset panics. The new mindset gets to work. This becomes her lesson in contractor management. She learns about the importance of lien waivers, of milestone-based payments, of having backup contractors on standby. She learns to create an ironclad scope of work document so there's no ambiguity. The flaky plumber, in his own frustrating way, teaches her how to build a system that protects her from flaky plumbers forever. The obstacle is the way. Every single problem you will ever face in real estate, a difficult tenant, a surprise zoning issue, a sudden market shift, is a curriculum. It's the universe handing you the exact lesson you need to learn to get to the next level. If you see it as a roadblock, you'll stay stuck. If you see it as the path itself, you'll become unstoppable. Because you're not just fixing a house, you're building your expertise. You're not just dealing with a problem, you're forging the skills that will make you a fortune over your career. Once you've embraced this mindset, you start to see that reacting to problems, even brilliantly, isn't enough. You need to get ahead of them. You need to move from being a firefighter to being an architect. This leads us to one of the most profound truths about achievement, from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Read that again. You fall to the level of your systems. Everyone in real estate has the same goals: financial freedom, passive income, building a legacy. But the people who actually achieve those goals aren't the ones who want it the most. They're the ones with the best systems. What is a system? It's simply a process you create to handle a recurring task, so you get a predictable, positive result every single time. It's your defense against chaos. It's how you make smart decisions when you're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed. Let's go back to Maria. After her first flip, which she managed to sell for a decent profit thanks to the lessons she learned, she's ready for the next one. But this time she's not just armed with experience. She's armed with systems. Instead of just hiring an inspector, she now has a 127-point personal inspection checklist she walks through herself before making an offer. She crawls into the attic. She goes into the crawl space. She's built a system for due diligence. Instead of hiring a contractor based on a verbal agreement, she now has a standardized 15-page independent contractor agreement that includes a detailed scope of work, a payment schedule tied to performance, penalty clauses for delays, and a requirement for lien waivers. She's built a system for project management. Instead of just tracking expenses in a messy spreadsheet, she uses dedicated software, categorizes every receipt immediately, and generates a budget versus actual report every Friday. She's built a system for financial tracking. These systems are not sexy. They are the boring, repetitive, unglamorous work that happens behind the scenes. But they are the engine of success. A goal is a point on a map. A system is the car, the fuel, and the GPS that gets you there. When the next termite problem appears, Maria's system will catch it. When the next contractor gets flaky, her system will protect her. Her systems allow her to handle more complexity with less stress. This is how you scale. You don't find the time. You create the time by building systems that run without your constant emotional and mental energy. You fall to the level of your system, so build them on a foundation of solid rock. Once you have the mindset to see obstacles as the way, and you've built the systems to manage the chaos, you can focus on the one skill that lubricates every part of the real estate machine: influence. This brings us to a quote from the master negotiator, Chester Carras. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. In real estate, everything is a negotiation. And I don't just mean the purchase price. You negotiate with the seller's agent to get your offer accepted. You negotiate with the lender on the terms of your loan. You negotiate with the appraiser if the value comes in low. You negotiate with your contractors on the price and timeline for a renovation. You negotiate with the city planning department over permits. You negotiate with prospective tenants on the lease terms. Your entire business is a series of critical conversations. Many people think negotiation is about being tough, about being aggressive, about winning at all costs. That's a novice's mistake. World-class negotiation isn't about winning an argument. It's about solving a problem. The key is to understand what the other side truly wants. When you're buying a property from an elderly couple downsizing, do they just want the highest price? Or do they want a simple, stress-free closing with a flexible move-out date, so they can transition to their new life without hassle? Maybe offering a free rent back for 60 days is more valuable to them than an extra $5,000. When you're hiring a top-tier electrician, are they only motivated by the highest hourly rate? Or does a great contractor want clear plans, readily available materials, and prompt payment, so they can work efficiently and move on to the next job? Being an organized, reliable client can often get you better pricing and priority scheduling than just being the highest bidder. You don't get what you deserve based on some cosmic sense of fairness. The market doesn't care that you worked hard or that you have good intentions. You get what you can articulate, justify, and agree upon. You get what you negotiate. This means doing your homework. It means knowing the market comps better than anyone else. It means getting multiple quotes for every job. It means understanding the motivations of every person you interact with. Mastering this skill, the art of principled negotiation, is like a superpower. It allows you to create value out of thin air. It can save you tens of thousands on a purchase, get a project finished weeks ahead of schedule, and secure high-quality, long-term tenants. It's the active ingredient that makes your mindset and your systems produce extraordinary results. These three pillars, seeing obstacles as the path, building robust systems, and mastering negotiation, are the foundation of turning a single deal into a true business. They are the skills that separate the amateurs from the professionals. They are what carry you through the messy middle and deliver you to the other side, stronger, smarter, and wealthier. You've now turned that initial chaotic deal into a predictable, well-oiled machine. But one or two properties won't lead to financial freedom. The real question is, how do you take this foundation and build an empire? How do you scale from one door to 100? That requires a totally different mindset, and a willingness to let go of the very things that made you successful in the first place. It's one of the cruelest paradoxes in business. The very grit, the hustle, the sheer force of will that gets you your first, second, or even fifth property becomes the very anchor that holds you down, preventing you from ever reaching your 10th, 50th, or 100th. Think about it. You're the one who got good at this. You can spot a good deal from a mile away. You know how to talk to a seller, how to estimate a rehab budget on the back of a napkin, how to screen a tenant to avoid a nightmare. You are the engine. You are the secret sauce. And that feels incredible. It's empowering. But it's also a trap. A golden cage you've built for yourself. Because if you are the secret sauce, your business can never be bigger than you. Your empire's growth is limited to the 24 hours you have in a day. You can't be in two places at once. You can't be negotiating a new purchase while simultaneously fixing a leaky toilet for a tenant at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. At some point, you don't own the properties own you. This is the wall that every successful investor eventually hits. It's the transition from being a hands-on investor to a hands-off business owner. And it is terrifying, because it requires you to trust others with your baby. It requires you to believe that someone else can do the job as well as you can. And most of all, it requires you to fire yourself from the jobs you've gotten so good at. I knew an investor, let's call him David. David was brilliant. He'd scraped together enough for a down payment on a duplex fresh out of college. He did the work himself, painted the walls, laid the flooring, learned basic plumbing from YouTube. He found great tenants. The cash flow was solid. So he did it again. And again. By the time he was 30, he had 6 properties. On paper, he was a massive success story. In reality, he was a prisoner. His phone was a ticking time bomb, always ready to explode with a tenant complaint or a maintenance emergency. He hadn't taken a real vacation in 5 years. He was the bookkeeper, the leasing agent, the handyman, the project manager, and the acquisition specialist for his own company. He was making more money than ever, but he had never been more miserable. He was burning out fast. His dream of financial freedom had morphed into a high-paying, high-stress job that he could never ever quit. He was the bottleneck in his own business, and the pressure was crushing him. The breaking point came when he was on a rare dinner date with his wife, celebrating their anniversary. His phone buzzed. It was a tenant. The water heater had burst. Water was everywhere. David looked at his wife, the frustration and exhaustion written all over his face. He spent the next 4 hours on the phone with plumbers and the frantic tenant, his anniversary dinner forgotten. Sitting in his car late that night, smelling of damp drywall and defeat, he realized this wasn't sustainable. He couldn't grow. He couldn't even live. He was stuck. He had mastered the art of buying and managing a few properties, but he had no idea how to build a business. This is where one of the most profound quotes in business history comes into play, not from a real estate guru, but from one of the greatest industrialists who ever lived, Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie, a man who built an empire of steel, once said, "No person will make a great business who wants to do it all himself or get all the credit." Read that again. It's not about finding the best deals. It's not about being the best negotiator. The secret to building a great business is the deliberate act of removing yourself from the day-to-day operations. It's a fundamental shift in identity. You have to stop thinking of yourself as a real estate investor and start thinking of yourself as the architect of a real estate machine. Your job is no longer to be the best handyman or the best leasing agent. Your new job, your only job, is to find people who are better than you at those things and then build a system for them to operate in. Let's break down what that actually looks like. Carnegie's wisdom forces you to perform a kind of business autopsy on yourself. You have to take every single task you do and put it into one of 3 buckets. Bucket 1, things you love to do and are great at. Bucket 2, things you're good at but don't enjoy. Bucket 3, things you hate doing and are probably not even that good at. For most investors, finding and analyzing deals might go in bucket 1. They love the thrill of the hunt. But tenant communication, bookkeeping, coordinating repairs? For many, that's firmly in bucket 3. The Carnegie mindset says you must systematically eliminate everything in bucket 3. And then bucket 2. Your goal is to spend all of your time in bucket 1 because that's your highest and best use. That's where you provide the most value to your enterprise. So how do you do it? You start with your first hire. This is the single most terrifying and liberating step in scaling. And it's almost always a property manager. You're not just hiring someone to collect rent. You are buying back your life. You're buying back your evenings, your weekends, your sanity. You're buying back the mental space that was previously occupied by leaky faucets and late rent payments. That mental space is now free to focus on growth, on finding the next deal, on raising capital, on the things that only you, the visionary, can do. But here's the critical part that most people miss. You can't just hand over the keys and hope for the best. That's abdication, not delegation. To truly scale, you need to create systems. Standard operating procedures. SOPs. This sounds corporate and boring, but it is the blueprint for your empire. You need to document your process for everything. How do you screen tenants? What's your late rent policy? Which plumber do you call for which type of problem? What's your step-by-step process for turning over a unit between tenants? You take the genius that's in your head and you put it on paper. You create a playbook. Why? Because that playbook allows someone else to run your plays. It ensures consistency. It ensures quality. It allows the business to run and grow. Whether you're on a beach in Hawaii or in a meeting securing funding for your next 10 properties, the system is what allows you to replicate your success. Without a system, you just have a job. With a system, you have a business. This is the essence of Carnegie's wisdom. He didn't know how to make steel better than all of his engineers, but he knew how to build a system and hire the best people to run it. He wasn't doing all the work. He was orchestrating it. He wasn't trying to get all the credit. He was focused on building the enterprise. When you make that mental leap, everything changes. The investor stuck with 6 properties like David is playing checkers. He's reacting to every move on the board. The investor who embraces this philosophy is playing chess. They're thinking 10 moves ahead. They're strategically placing their pieces, their property manager, their bookkeeper, their contractor, their real estate agent, to control the board. They are no longer a piece in the game, they are the player. The fear of letting go is real. What if they mess up? What if they don't care as much as I do? They won't. Not at first. But a good system with the right people will outperform a brilliant but burnt-out individual every single time. And that's how you scale. That's how you go from 6 doors to 60. It's not about working harder. It's about thinking differently. It's about letting go of the need to do it all yourself and embracing your new role as a builder of systems and a leader of people. You stop being the janitor and the landlord, and you become the CEO. You've successfully built the engine. You've hired a team to operate it and created a manual to ensure it runs smoothly. The machine is ready, but an engine, no matter how perfectly designed, is just a heavy piece of metal without fuel. Now that you have the capacity to grow, the bottleneck shifts. It's no longer about your time. It's about capital. So where do you find the high-octane fuel to power your empire to the next level? The answer isn't in a bank vault or a government grant. It's a lot closer than you think. It's hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right person to see it. The legendary Winston Churchill once said, "A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty." And when it comes to finding capital, that single shift in perspective is the difference between a stalled engine and a rocket launch. The fuel you're looking for isn't just money. It's opportunity. And opportunity is everywhere. Let me tell you about a man who embodied this. His name was Conrad Hilton. Today you hear that name and you think of luxury hotels, global empires, and immense wealth. But it wasn't always that way. In 1919, Conrad was a man with a dream and a pocket full of cash, heading to Cisco, Texas during the oil boom. His plan wasn't to get into real estate. It was to buy a bank. He had it all worked out. He arrived, ready to make a deal, only to find that the seller had gotten greedy. He'd raised the price at the last minute, putting the bank just out of Conrad's reach. This is the first moment where most people would have packed their bags. They would have seen the difficulty. A failed deal, a wasted trip, a dead end. But Conrad wasn't most people. Frustrated, he went to find a room for the night at the local hotel, a place called the Mobley. What he found was chaos. A massive line of rough, tired oilfield workers snaked out the door, all desperate for a bed. The owner was so overwhelmed he was renting out beds in 8-hour shifts. He was making a fortune, but he was miserable. He just wanted to retire. And in that moment of difficulty, in that crowded, chaotic lobby, Conrad Hilton saw the opportunity. The bank deal didn't fail, it was a detour. He forgot about buying a bank. He was going to buy this hotel. He approached the owner, who threw out a price of $50,000. Conrad had $15,000 to his name. The difficulty was a $35,000 gap. So what did he do? He became an optimist. He saw the opportunity in the problem itself. He scraped together $5,000 from his own savings. He called his friends, his family, anyone who would listen, and raised another $20,000. He went to the banker he had just tried to buy a bank from and got a loan for the rest. He didn't just find the capital. He willed it into existence by selling the vision, by showing others the opportunity he saw. He bought the Mobley Hotel, and the Hilton Empire was born. For the next decade, he was on fire. He expanded across Texas, buying a new hotel every year. He was the king of hospitality. But then 1929 happened. The stock market crashed, and the Great Depression swept across the nation like a plague. Travel stopped. Hotels sat empty. And Conrad, who had built his empire on leverage and debt, was dangerously exposed. The banks came calling. One by one, he lost his hotels. The empire he had built with his bare hands crumbled into dust. By 1931, he had lost everything. He didn't even own the clothes on his back. He was a millionaire on paper who was now borrowing cash from his bellhops to feed his family. This wasn't a difficulty. This was a catastrophe, a total wipeout. For anyone else, this would be the end of the story. But again, Conrad Hilton saw an opportunity in the most devastating difficulty of his life. He had lost ownership, but he hadn't lost his knowledge. He was the best hotel operator in the country. The new owners, the banks, they knew how to collect debts, but they had no idea how to run a hotel. So Conrad made them a deal. He convinced them to hire him as the manager of his own former hotel chain for a salary of $18,000 a year. Think about the sheer audacity. He was now a paid employee in the empire he once owned. But he wasn't defeated. He was gathering fuel. He lived frugally, saving every penny of his salary. He watched as the Depression deepened, and the value of his old hotels plummeted even further. The very banks that had foreclosed on him were now desperate to get these non-performing assets off their books. And who was there waiting with a small but growing pile of cash? Conrad Hilton. He started buying them back. He went to his old partners, his old friends, and raised more money. He bought back one hotel, then another, often for pennies on the dollar of what they were once worth. The greatest financial crisis in American history became his single greatest opportunity. He didn't just rebuild his empire. He built a bigger, stronger one on the ruins of the old, fueled by the capital he found in the heart of a disaster. This is the secret. The fuel you need is not sitting in a single location. It's a mindset. It's understanding that capital comes from three primary sources, none of which are the giant, faceless bank on the corner. First, there is the bank of relationships. This was Conrad's first stop. Your network is your first and most important source of fuel. This is your family, your friends, your colleagues, other investors you meet at local meetups. These people aren't investing in the property. They're investing in you. They trust you. They believe in your vision and your ability to execute. You don't need 100 investors. You need a handful of people who believe in you. You build this account not with dollars, but with trust, integrity, and a track record of doing what you say you will do. Second, there is the bank of the seller. This is one of the most powerful and overlooked sources of capital in all of real estate. Sometimes the person selling the property can be your lender. It's called seller financing. Maybe they own the property free and clear, and would rather have a steady stream of monthly income than a big lump sum of cash they have to pay taxes on. By making them the bank, you can often structure a deal with a low down payment and flexible terms. You're not asking for a handout, you're solving their problem. They want to sell, you want to buy. You're just getting creative about how the money changes hands. This requires you to understand the seller's motivation, to find their pain point and present your offer as the solution. Third, and most importantly, there is the bank of the deal itself. This is the ultimate truth of real estate investing. A great deal will always attract money. Money is a coward. It runs from uncertainty and risk, but it is a magnet for opportunity and security. If you can find a property that is significantly undervalued, that has a clear path to generating massive cash flow, or has huge forced appreciation potential, the money will find you. Your primary job is not to be a capital raiser. Your job is to be an opportunity finder. When you bring a phenomenal deal to the table, a deal where the numbers are undeniable, people with capital will line up to be your partner. The deal itself becomes the fuel. You are no longer begging for money. You are offering an opportunity to make money. Completely flips the script. Conrad Hilton mastered all three. He leveraged relationships, he creatively negotiated with the owners and the banks, and most of all, he knew how to spot a good deal, whether it was a crowded lobby in Cisco or a bankrupt property in the depths of the Depression. He understood that capital wasn't a scarce resource to be hoarded. It was a current of opportunity, and his job was to learn how to swim in it. The bottleneck is never truly the money. The bottleneck is your ability to see the opportunity inside the difficulty. It's your creativity, your persistence, your reputation. When you build those, you build your own bank, one that never runs dry. But finding the money is only half the battle. Once you have a potential deal and a potential partner, how do you know if you're about to make a fortune or a catastrophic mistake? How do you separate the gold from the garbage? The answer lies in a fundamental shift in perspective. Most people approach a deal asking, "Can I afford this?" The professional investor asks, "Does this make sense?" The first question is about emotion and limitation. The second is about logic and opportunity. This is the core of separating the gold from the garbage. It's not about having a crystal ball. It's about having a calculator and the discipline to use it. It's about internalizing one of the most powerful truths in all of investing, a concept famously articulated by the master himself, Warren Buffett. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. This quote is the bedrock of intelligent investing. Price is the number on the contract. It's a simple emotional figure that screams at you, either, "This is a bargain," or "This is too expensive." Value, on the other hand, is quiet. Value is the sum of a dozen hidden calculations. It's the result of your due diligence. It's the future rental income, the appreciation potential, the quality of the neighborhood, the condition of the foundation, the cost of the inevitable repairs. Price is a single data point. Value is the entire story. Imagine two investors, both looking at a duplex listed for $100,000 in a C-class neighborhood. The price seems incredibly low. Investor A, driven by price, gets excited. He sees the low number and imagines the possibilities. He thinks, "I can finally get in the game. 100 grand is a steal." He gets caught in the frenzy of the good deal, puts in an offer, and wins the bidding war at $110,000. He's ecstatic. He bought a property. Investor B sees the same $100,000 price tag, but she doesn't feel excitement. She feels suspicion. She asks, "Why is the price so low?" She starts digging for the value. She pulls the rental comps and finds that units in the area are renting for less than she projected. She calls the city planning department and discovers a new industrial park is slated for construction 2 blocks away, which could hurt residential desirability. She hires a scrupulous home inspector who finds evidence of termite damage in the floor joists and an ancient electrical panel that's a fire hazard waiting to happen. She calculates the cost of these repairs, the lower than expected rent, and the potential for a decrease in property value. Suddenly, the $100,000 price doesn't look like a bargain. The value is closer to $60,000, and that's before the headaches. She walks away without a second thought, while investor A is left holding a ticking financial time bomb. All because he confused price with value. So how do you develop the discipline of investor B? How do you force yourself to look for the quiet value instead of being seduced by the loud price? It comes down to another timeless piece of wisdom, also from Warren Buffett, that is the antidote to reckless speculation. Risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. This is the key. Risk in real estate isn't about market crashes or bad tenants. Those are just variables. True catastrophic risk is ignorance. It's stepping onto the field without knowing the rules of the game. Investor A took on massive risk because he didn't know what he was doing. He was gambling. Investor B eliminated almost all of the risk because she had a process. She knew exactly what she was doing. Knowing what you're doing isn't about genius. It's about process. It's about creating a non-negotiable checklist for every single potential deal. First, you master the numbers. You don't guess, you calculate. You learn to speak the language of cash flow, net operating income, and cash-on-cash return. You build a spreadsheet that doesn't care about your feelings. It takes in the purchase price, the closing costs, the rehab budget, the projected rent, and a healthy budget for vacancies, repairs, and capital expenditures. Then it spits out the truth. If the numbers on the screen don't match your investment criteria, you walk. Period. The spreadsheet is your unbiased business partner that saves you from your own emotional blind spots. Second, you investigate the physical asset. You look past the fresh gray paint and the cheap laminate flooring that flippers use to hide problems. You become a detective. You look for the things that truly matter: the age of the roof, the condition of the HVAC system, the state of the plumbing, the integrity of the foundation. These are the big-ticket items that can turn a profitable deal into a money pit overnight. You either learn how to spot these issues yourself or you pay a professional who can. You never, ever skip the inspection to make your offer more attractive. That's like a pilot deciding to skip the pre-flight check to take off a few minutes early. It's a risk that is never, ever worth the reward. Third, you analyze the location with a microscope. The old saying is location, 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 but the modern investor goes deeper. It's not just about the address, it's about the trajectory. Is the city investing in infrastructure in this area? What do the school ratings look like? Is a major employer moving in or moving out? Are there new coffee shops and restaurants opening? Or are storefronts being boarded up? You're not just buying a building. You're buying a tiny piece of a community. You need to be sure that community is moving in the right direction. This rigorous process is what separates the amateur from the professional. The amateur falls in love with a house. The professional falls in love with a deal. The house is wood and nails. The deal is numbers on a page. And when you know your numbers, when you've done your homework, you gain the confidence to act on the third, and perhaps most famous Buffett quote, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." This single sentence is a masterclass in market psychology. When the market is hot, when everyone is shouting about how much money they're making, when houses are getting a dozen offers the day they're listed, that is the time for fear. That is the time for extreme caution. The greedy herd is driving prices far beyond their intrinsic value. This is when investor buys, caught up in the FOMO, the fear of missing out. But the disciplined investor, the one who sticks to their process, recognizes this environment as dangerous. They may have to analyze 50 or even 100 properties before they find one where the numbers still make sense. They are fearful, not because the market is bad, but because the prices are insane. They have the supreme patience to sit on the sidelines with their cash, waiting for the right pitch. Then the market turns. The headlines become negative. People get scared. The fair weather investors run for the exits. This is the moment of fear. And this is when the prepared investor becomes greedy. Not a reckless emotional greed, but a calculated strategic greed. Because they've been doing their homework all along, they know what a good deal looks like. They know the true value of properties in their target market. And when prices drop below that value, they act with speed and conviction. They are buying when everyone else is selling, securing assets at a discount that will generate wealth for decades to come. This is how fortunes are made. Not by timing the market, but by understanding value and having the courage to act when others are paralyzed by fear. Separating the gold from the garbage isn't a secret. It's a system. It's the discipline to analyze, the courage to walk away from a bad deal, and the wisdom to act decisively on a great one. It's about transforming yourself from a gambler hoping for a lucky break into a strategist who creates their own luck through meticulous preparation. Once you have this system in place, you've conquered the art of buying right. But buying right is just the first step. What's the single biggest force that can amplify a good deal and turn it into a life-changing generational wealth-building machine? It's not the property, and it's not the market. It's a tool that you have almost complete control over, yet it is so powerful and so misunderstood that it builds empires for some and leads others to ruin. That tool is debt. Yes, debt. Leverage. The ability to use other people's money to control an asset far more valuable than your own cash reserves. It is the rocket fuel of real estate. It's what separates a savings account from a real estate empire. But like rocket fuel, if you handle it incorrectly, it will blow up in your face with catastrophic consequences. The difference between wealth and ruin isn't the existence of debt, but the understanding of it. It's a concept perfectly captured by Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, when he said, "There is good debt and bad debt. Good debt makes you rich." This single sentence is one of the most profound and misunderstood principles of modern wealth creation, and it is the absolute bedrock of successful real estate investing. From the day we are born, we are conditioned to fear debt. We're told to cut up our credit cards, to pay off our loans as fast as possible, to live debt-free. And for most people, that is sound advice. Because most people are only familiar with one kind of debt: bad debt. Bad debt is the enemy of your financial freedom. It's the $5,000 credit card balance for a vacation you took 2 years ago, still accruing interest at 22%. It's the $70,000 loan for a depreciating luxury car that loses 10% of its value the second you drive it off the lot. It's the buy now, pay later plan for a new sofa. Bad debt takes money out of your pocket every single month. It is a parasite. It feeds on your future income to pay for your past consumption. It is a ball and chain shackled to your ankle, getting heavier with every interest payment, forcing you to run faster and faster on the hamster wheel of your 9-to-5 job just to stay in the same place. Good debt is the complete opposite. Good debt is a powerful employee that you hire to go out and work for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Good debt puts money into your pocket every single month. In real estate, the most common form of good debt is a mortgage on an income-producing property. Let's make this real. Imagine two people, Sarah and Tom. Both are 30 years old, both have good jobs, and both have saved up $40,000. Tom, conditioned by the conventional wisdom, sees debt as the enemy. He wants to buy his dream home. He takes his $40,000, puts it down on a $400,000 house in a nice suburb. He now has a $360,000 mortgage. This is his primary residence. Every month, a huge chunk of his paycheck goes to the bank to cover the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. If the roof leaks, he pays for it. If the water heater breaks, he pays for it. His house is a beautiful, comfortable place to live, but financially, it is a voracious monster that eats his income. His mortgage is, by this definition, bad debt. Takes money out of his pocket every month. Now let's look at Sarah. Sarah has read Kiyosaki. She understands the difference. She takes her same $40,000 and instead of buying her dream home, she buys a $400,000 duplex in a solid, working-class neighborhood. She lives in one half of the duplex and rents out the other half. Her mortgage is also $360,000. But here's the magic. The rent from her tenant next door is enough to cover the entire mortgage payment, plus the taxes and insurance. Suddenly, Sarah is living for free. The debt is still there, but it's not taking money out of her pocket. Her tenant is paying it for her. In fact, after all expenses are paid, let's say she has an extra $200 left over each month. This is called cash flow. Her mortgage has now been transformed into good debt. It is an asset. It is an employee. Every single month, her tenant is paying down her loan, increasing her equity, while the property itself is likely appreciating in value over time. She has used the bank's money, other people's money, to acquire an asset that someone else is paying for, which is also paying her to own it. Let this sink in. Tom is working a job to pay for his house. Sarah has a house that is working for her, eliminating her biggest living expense and giving her extra income. Now let's fast forward 5 years. Tom is still in his house, diligently paying his mortgage. He's gotten a few raises, but so has his cost of living. He's comfortable, but he's still on the hamster wheel. He's paid down some of his loan, but he's no closer to financial freedom. Sarah, on the other hand, has been living for free for 5 years. She's been able to save her money aggressively. The $200 a month in cash flow has become a steady stream. More importantly, her tenant has paid down tens of thousands of dollars of her mortgage, and the duplex has appreciated in value. She now has a significant amount of equity. So what does she do? She goes to the bank and takes out a loan against that equity. It's called a cash-out refinance. She pulls out, say, $50,000 tax-free because it's a loan, and uses that money as a down payment on another rental property. A small single-family home this time. She places a tenant in that property, and the rent covers the new mortgage, all the expenses, and puts another $300 a month into her pocket. Do you see what's happening? She started with the same $40,000 as Tom, but by using good debt, she now controls $800,000 worth of real estate. She has 2 tenants paying down 2 mortgages for her. Her net worth is skyrocketing. Her monthly cash flow is growing. She hasn't just bought properties, she has bought herself income streams. She is building a machine that will eventually replace her salary. A machine funded almost entirely with other people's money. Tom is using his labor to pay for debt. Sarah is using debt to pay for her freedom. That is the profound power of Kiyosaki's quote. It's not about avoiding debt. It's about mastering it. It's about learning to distinguish the tool that builds empires from the weapon that destroys dreams. Bad debt is a chain. Good debt is a key. The wealthy don't get rich by saving their way to millions. They get rich by borrowing their way to millions using carefully selected, income-producing assets that other people, tenants, pay for. This is the single greatest mindset shift you must make to succeed in real estate. You have to unlearn a lifetime of conditioning. You have to stop seeing a mortgage as a burden and start seeing it as a powerful strategic tool. When you look at a loan application, you shouldn't feel fear. You should feel power, the power to control a $100,000 asset with $10,000, the power to build a portfolio that generates passive income while you sleep. But knowing the difference between good debt and bad debt is just the first key. It unlocks the door, but it doesn't show you the path inside the castle. Because once you embrace good debt, you're faced with 1,000 new questions. How much debt is too much? How do you analyze a property to ensure the debt will be good and not turn bad? What happens if your tenant leaves? This is where most people get stuck. They understand the theory, but they freeze when it comes time for the practice. They are paralyzed by the what-ifs. The next secret is about what you do once that door is open. It's about how you walk through it with confidence. It's about the one metric, the single most important calculation, that separates amateur investors from professional empire builders. A number so critical that if you get it right, it almost guarantees your success, and if you get it wrong, you could lose everything. That number, that all-important metric, is called the cash-on-cash return. It's a concept that financial guru Robert Kiyosaki perfectly captured when he said, "Don't work for money, make it work for you." We've all heard that quote. It's on posters, it's in books, it's the mantra of every aspiring entrepreneur. But what does it actually mean? In real estate, it means understanding that your job isn't just to own a building. Your job is to command an army of dollars, and the cash-on-cash return is your report card on how well your army is fighting for you. Let's break it down. Forget complex spreadsheets and confusing financial jargon for a moment. The cash-on-cash return is brutally simple. It's the amount of cash you get back each year, divided by the amount of cash you put in. That's it. It's the purest measure of an investment's performance, because it answers the only question that truly matters to an investor. For every single dollar I pull out of my own pocket, how many cents is it putting back into my pocket this year? This is where the amateurs and the professionals diverge onto two completely different paths. To see how, let's imagine two investors, cautious Carl and strategic Sarah. Both have $150,000 saved up, ready to invest. They find the exact same duplex for sale. It's a solid property in a decent neighborhood, and after all operating expenses, taxes, insurance, maintenance, vacancy, it generates a net operating income of $14,400 a year. Cautious Carl, like many people, is afraid of debt. He's heard horror stories about mortgages and foreclosures, so he decides to play it safe. He takes his entire $150,000 and buys the duplex outright. No loan, no interest, no bank. He owns it free and clear. His annual cash flow is simple. It's the $14,400 in net income. He's pretty happy. He's making way more than he would in a savings account. Now let's calculate his cash-on-cash return. He gets $14,400 back per year. He invested $150,000 of his own cash. His return is 9.6%. Not bad at all. By most standards, that's a successful investment. Carl feels secure. He feels smart. But now let's look at strategic Sarah. She looks at the exact same duplex, the same price, the same income. But she sees the world through the lens of cash-on-cash return. She knows that her $150,000 is her army, and she's not going to send her entire army to capture one hill. She's going to be a general. Instead of paying all cash, she goes to a bank and gets a standard investment property loan. She puts 20% down. 20% of $150,000 is $30,000. The bank lends her the other $120,000. Let's say her mortgage payment for the year, including principal and interest, comes out to about $8,600. So what does her cash flow look like? She starts with the same $14,400 in net operating income, but she has to pay the bank. So she subtracts her $8,600 mortgage payment. She's left with $5,800 in her pocket at the end of the year. Looking at it from the surface, it seems like Carl won, right? He's pocketing over $14,000 a year, and Sarah's only getting $5,800. This is the trap. This is where 99% of people get it wrong. They only look at the total cash flow. They don't look at the efficiency of their capital. Let's calculate Sarah's cash-on-cash return. She gets $5,800 back per year. But how much of her own money did she invest? Not $150,000. Only $30,000. Her cash-on-cash return is $5,800 divided by $30,000. That comes out to 19.3%. Let that sink in. Carl is making a 9.6% return on his money. Sarah is making a 19.3% return on hers. Her money is working more than twice as hard as Carl's. She has made her money work for her. She understood the assignment. But the story doesn't end there. This is where empires are built. Remember, both Carl and Sarah started with the same $150,000. Carl put all of his money into one property. His capital is now trapped, locked away inside the brick and mortar of that one duplex. He's done. He can collect his income, but he can't grow. What about Sarah? After buying the first duplex, she still has $120,000 of her initial capital left in her bank account. So what does she do? She finds another, identical duplex. She puts $30,000 down on that one, then another, and another, and another. With the same starting capital that allowed Carl to buy one property, strategic Sarah has just put down payments on 5 properties. She now controls $750,000 worth of real estate. Carl controls $150,000. Let's look at her total annual cash flow. She's making $5,800 from each of her 5 duplexes. That's a total of $29,000 per year hitting her bank account. Cautious Carl is still collecting his $14,400. Sarah is now making more than double the annual income of Carl, even after paying 5 separate mortgages. And we haven't even talked about the other benefits. Carl has 1 set of tenants paying down his equity. Sarah has 5 sets of tenants paying down 5 separate loans, building her net worth at 5 times the speed. If the properties appreciate by just 3% in 1 year, Carl's net worth increases by $4,500. Sarah's net worth? It increases by over $22,000. She gets the appreciation on the full value of the properties, not just on her down payment. This is the power of leverage, and cash-on-cash return is the metric that unlocks it. It forces you to stop thinking like a saver and start thinking like a true investor. It's not about how much money you have, it's about the velocity of your money. How fast and how hard can you make each dollar work before you bring it home and send it back out on another mission? A low cash-on-cash return means your money is lazy, sitting on the couch. A high cash-on-cash return means your money is in the gym, it's training, it's building, it's multiplying. This single calculation shifts your entire perspective from buying a property to acquiring an asset that generates the highest possible return on my deployed capital. It's the fundamental difference between owning a job and owning a system. Now, this doesn't mean you should ignore everything else. Of course, you need to buy in a good location. Of course, you need to account for repairs. Of course, you need to be smart about the debt you take on. But if you don't know your cash-on-cash return, you're flying blind. You're just guessing. You're cautious Carl feeling safe while strategic Sarah is quietly building an empire right next door. Understanding this is like being given a key to a locked door. But once you have the key, you still have to face the challenge of turning it. You have to overcome the fear and the uncertainty that holds so many people back. It brings to mind another piece of wisdom, one often attributed to humorist Ray Brown, that cuts right to the heart of this paralysis. The major fortunes in America have been made in land. That's a quote often attributed to the titan of industry, John D. Rockefeller, but the sentiment that truly captures the investor's dilemma comes from humorist Ray Brown. He said, "The best time to buy a house was 20 years ago. The second best time is now." Let that sink in. It's a quote of 2 parts, and the first part is a trap. The best time to buy a house was 20 years ago. We all live there sometimes, don't we? In the land of if only. If only I had bought that stock when it was $1. If only I had started that business before it got competitive. If only I had bought that duplex back in 2012 when prices seemed impossibly low. This feeling is regret, and it's one of the most powerful forms of paralysis. It convinces you that the ship has sailed, the opportunity is gone, and you're left standing on the shore. It's a lie. It's a story we tell ourselves to justify our inaction in the present. Looking back with perfect 20/20 hindsight is easy. It requires no courage, no risk, no skin in the game. It's a comfortable prison of what might have been. But every single person who bought real estate 20 years ago was standing in their own now. They didn't have a crystal ball. They faced their own set of fears, their own media headlines screaming about uncertainty, their own friends and family telling them they were crazy. The person who bought a home in 2004 for what looks like a steal today was worried about the dot-com bubble's aftershocks and a volatile global landscape. The person who bought in 1994 was dealing with rising interest rates and memories of the recession just a few years prior. They weren't time travelers, they were action takers. And that brings us to the second most powerful part of the quote. The second best time is now. This is where the power shifts back to you. It's the release from the prison of regret. It's the acknowledgement that the past is a lesson, not a life sentence. The only moment you can control, the only point in time where you can make a decision is right now. Today, this moment is the 20 years ago for the person who will be standing in 2044. They will look back at today's prices, today's interest rates, today's market conditions, and they will say, if only I had bought back in 2024. You are living in someone else's future dream. You have the opportunity to be the person they envy, the person who took action while others waited for a perfect moment that never came. This isn't a call for reckless abandon. It's a call to abandon the paralysis of perfectionism. It's a call to do the research, make a plan, and then execute it in the only time you have now. Because the clock is always ticking, and the second best time will always be today, until you make it the best time you ever took a chance. This idea of taking action now, rather than waiting for some mythical perfect moment, is a cornerstone of real estate wisdom. It's a philosophy that was beautifully articulated by the real estate investor and broker Louis Glickman, who gave us one of the most quoted maxims in the industry. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. Let's break that down because it's a masterclass in investment psychology. Don't wait to buy real estate. This first part directly attacks the enemy of wealth, procrastination disguised as strategy. So many people are waiting. They're waiting for prices to drop by another 5%. They're waiting for interest rates to fall by another 0.5 point. They're waiting for their income to be a little higher, for their job to be a little more secure, for the stars to align in a perfect celestial symphony. This is what we call analysis paralysis. You consume so much information, market reports, news articles, YouTube videos, podcast episodes, that you become frozen, unable to make a move. You convince yourself that with just a little more data, the perfect risk-free decision will reveal itself. But the market doesn't care about your spreadsheet. It doesn't wait for you to feel comfortable. While you're waiting for the perfect entry point, prices are appreciating, rents are rising, and others are building equity. Glickman's advice is a splash of cold water. He's saying that you can't time the market. The people who try to perfectly time the bottom and perfectly time the top are speculators, they're gamblers. Investors, on the other hand, understand that the goal isn't to nail the timing perfectly. The goal is to get in the game. That's where the second half of the quote becomes so profound. Buy real estate and wait. This shifts the entire paradigm. The power isn't in the timing of the purchase. The power is in the time after the purchase. You're not buying a lottery ticket, hoping it hits tomorrow. You're planting a tree. You don't dig up the seed every day to see if it's growing. You put it in fertile soil, you water it, and you let time do the heavy lifting. When you buy a property, you're not just buying lumber and drywall. You're acquiring an asset that benefits from several powerful, slow-moving forces. First, there's appreciation. Over the long term, driven by inflation and demand, real estate values have consistently trended upward. Second, there's the loan paydown. Every single month, your tenant, or you, is paying down your mortgage, systematically increasing your equity, your ownership stake in the asset. It's like a forced savings account that's simultaneously growing in value. Third, you have cash flow, the rental income that covers your expenses and hopefully puts money in your pocket every month. And finally, there are massive tax advantages. These forces don't create overnight millionaires. They work slowly, quietly, relentlessly in the background. Buy and wait is a strategy of patience. It's a commitment to a long-term vision over short-term gratification. It's the understanding that true wealth in real estate isn't made in the buying or the selling. It's made in the waiting. This long-term perspective forces you to ask a more fundamental question. Why is real estate such a resilient and powerful investment in the first place? What makes it different from stocks or crypto or any other asset class? The answer is beautifully simple, and it was captured with the classic wit and wisdom of the American icon Will Rogers. He famously advised, buy land. They're not making it anymore. That's it. In 7 simple words, Will Rogers distilled the single most powerful economic principle that underpins all real estate value: scarcity. Think about it. A company can issue more stock. A government can print more money. Developers can create new cryptocurrencies out of thin air. But the one thing humanity cannot create more of is land. The surface of the earth is finite. We have what we have, and that's all we're ever going to get. This simple, unchangeable fact is the bedrock of real estate's enduring value. Every other factor, interest rates, market cycles, government policies, is just noise that plays out on top of this fundamental truth. Now, couple that finite supply with a constantly growing demand. The world's population continues to increase. More people need places to live, to work, to shop, to exist. They all need to occupy a piece of that same fixed amount of land. This is the simple, undeniable equation for long-term appreciation. As demand presses up against a fixed supply, the value of that supply is driven upward. When you buy a piece of property, you are not just buying a house, you are buying your own small monopoly. You own a unique patch of this finite planet that no one else can create or replicate. It's an investment in the most tangible asset there is. In a world that is becoming increasingly digital, virtual, and abstract, there is a profound power in owning something real. Something you can stand on, something you can touch, something that provides the basic human need for shelter. Will Rogers' advice wasn't just a clever quip. It was a deep insight into the nature of lasting value. It's a reminder that while fads and technologies come and go, the land beneath our feet remains. Owning a piece of it is more than an investment strategy. It's securing your stake in the one thing they will never ever make more of. This isn't just about building wealth. It's about building a future. It's about creating a foundation upon which generations can stand. But there's one final mindset, one ultimate truth that separates the successful from the rest, and it has almost nothing to do with markets or money. It's about people. That's it. That's the final truth. The ultimate key that unlocks not just success, but fulfillment in this industry, is the profound, unshakable understanding that you are not in the business of houses. You are in the business of people. You are not trading properties. You are facilitating dreams. You are not closing deals. You are opening chapters. Every single person who has achieved legendary status in this field understood this, not as a sales tactic, but as a fundamental law of the universe. There's a quote from the late Senator Johnny Isaacson, who before his time in Washington, spent over 40 years building a hugely successful real estate company. He said, "In the real estate business you learn more about people, and you learn more about community issues, you learn more about life, you learn more about the impact of government, probably than any other profession that I know of." Let's break that down, because within that single sentence lies the entire philosophy for a meaningful career. You learn more about people. Think about it. You are invited into the most intimate moments of a person's life. You are there when a young couple, trembling with a mix of excitement and terror, decides to buy their first home. You see the hope in their eyes, the dreams they have for the family they will raise within those walls. You are there when an elderly widow has to sell the home she shared with her husband for 50 years. You feel the weight of every memory in every room, the ghost of a life well lived, and you are entrusted with the sacred duty of honoring that past while helping her step into an uncertain future. You are there for the investor laser-focused on numbers and growth, and you learn about ambition, risk, and the relentless pursuit of financial freedom. You are there for the family that's relocating for a new job, the family that's downsizing after the kids left, the family that's upgrading because of a new baby. Joy, grief, hope, fear, ambition, loss. You are at the intersection of every human emotion. To see this as just a transaction is to be blind to the very heart of your work. The real work is to listen, to understand, to empathize, and to serve the human being, not just the contract. Then Isaacson says, you learn more about community issues. This is where your role expands from a guide to a builder. You can't be great in this business by only knowing your listings. You have to know your community's soul. You are on the front lines of change. You see how a new school bond affects property values and, more importantly, a family's decision on where to raise their children. You understand the impact of a zoning change not as a line on a map, but as a shift in the way people will live and interact for decades to come. You know which neighborhoods are revitalizing, where the new parks are going, where the best coffee is, which streets are safe for kids to play on. You become a living, breathing encyclopedia of your community. And in doing so, you are not just selling houses in a community. You are actively weaving the fabric of that community, connecting the right people to the right places, helping to create the kind of neighborhood where people don't just live, but where they belong. And finally, the most profound part, you learn more about life. Because what is a home if not the stage upon which life plays out? The height charts penciled on a door frame, the kitchen table that hosts everything from homework and bills to Thanksgiving dinners and heartfelt confessions, the backyard that sees first steps, first bike rides, and graduation parties, the front porch where you watch the world go by and feel a sense of place. To be in real estate is to have a front row seat to the entire human experience. You learn that a foundation is more than concrete. It's the stability you provide a family. You learn that a roof is more than shingles. It's the security and shelter you help someone find in a chaotic world. You learn that a deed is more than a piece of paper. It's a claim to a piece of the world, a place to put down roots, a legacy to pass on. You learn about economics and markets, yes, but you also learn about resilience, about hope, about the enduring power of the human spirit to create a sanctuary for itself and for the ones it loves. This is the mindset that changes everything. It reframes your motivation. The goal is no longer just to make a sale. The goal is to make a difference. The commission is not the prize. It's the byproduct of a service rendered with excellence and empathy. This is what fuels you through the hard calls, the failed inspections, the deals that fall apart at the last minute. You're not just losing a paycheck, you're fighting for someone's dream. And that is a far more powerful fuel than money could ever be. This brings us to the end of our journey, and to one final quote. It is perhaps the most famous real estate quote of all time, uttered by the great American humorist Will Rogers. We've all heard it 1,000 times. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. For most of our careers, we interpret this quote through a purely financial lens. We see it as a simple, brilliant mantra for wealth creation. Buy an asset, hold it, and let time and the market work their magic. And that is true. It is sound financial advice. But after everything we've discussed today, I want you to see it in a new light. I want you to see the profound human truth hidden within those simple words. Buy real estate. It's the act of commitment. It's the decision to plant a flag, to build a nest, to create a center for your life. It's the beginning of a story. And wait, this is the part we get wrong. The waiting is not passive. The waiting is not an empty space between purchase and profit. The waiting is life itself. The waiting is the living. It's the sound of children's laughter echoing down the hallway. It's the smell of coffee on a quiet Sunday morning. It's the arguments and the making up. It's the family dinners. It's the holidays. It's the quiet moments of peace and the chaotic moments of joy. It's watching your neighborhood grow and change around you. It's becoming part of something larger than yourself. The value that accrues during the waiting is not just measured in equity. It's measured in memories. It's measured in love. It's measured in a life fully lived. So your job, your calling is not just to convince people to buy and wait. It is to help them find the perfect place to do the waiting. The place where their life will unfold. The place where their legacy will begin. And your own success, your own legacy, will not be defined by the number of properties you sold. It will be defined by the number of lives you touched, the number of communities you helped build, and the number of beautiful stories you helped set in motion. Don't just sell real estate. Build futures. Don't just close deals. Open doors to a better life. Understand that every brick you lay, every contract you sign, every family you guide home, is an act of creation. You are not just building a portfolio or a career. You are building the world one home, one dream, one life at a time. And that is the motivation worth everything.